خير وقت ظللنا فيه واجعلنا من أرض مر عليه الليل والنهار من جملة خلقك أشكرهم لما أوليت من نعمك وأقومهم بما شرعت من شرائعك وأوقفهم عما حذرت من نحيك على صائر خلقك في يوم هذا وساعة هذه ومستقر هذا إني أشهد أنك أنت الله الذي لا إله إلا أنت قائم بالقسط عدل في الحكم رؤوف بالعباد وأن محمدا عبدك ورسولك وخيرتك من خلقك حملته رسالتك فأداها وأمرته لصلاة الجمعة لأمته فنسح لها اللهم فصل على محمد وآله أكثر ما صليت على أحد من خلقك واجزه عنا أفضل وأكرم ما جزيت أحدا من أنبيائك عن أمته إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم أما بعد أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. First of all, I admonish myself, then you all, on the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is key to success both in this world and the hereafter. One of the most important parts of taqwa is our akhlaq. And everything will be forgiven, but akhlaq is a sin that will not be forgiven if a person does not have good ethics, or not just ethics but manners and the extent of everything. If you look at all the obligations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made upon us, they are beneficial first for ourselves more than other people. All of these things are more beneficial for us. Everyone wants to be in the company and the presence of a person who has good akhlaq. And people who don't have good akhlaq, people who are not ethical people, no one wants to be with them. You attract people with your akhlaq. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, the Holy Prophet is in the highest level of akhlaq. لَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were not of good conduct, these people that have come around you, they would have left you. So it is extremely important that we establish this akhlaq in our lives. And it begins with just a smile. Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam da'iman yatabassam. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was always smiling. Amir al-Mu'minin, the greatest criticism from his enemies on him was that he was always smiling, if you remember that. You know, that he was always, in the worst of the circumstance, he was smiling. So it is very important that we try and establish. And yes, we all have bad moments, but it is important that we control our emotions. There are many hadiths against ghadab or anger. Al-ghadabu akhiruhun nadam. Maulana Syed says that the end result of anger is regression. You regret that, I was upset at the wrong time or at the wrong person. One of the, if you look at all the ethical issues that we may have, there is a reason for it. And bad akhlaq sometimes, bad upbringing, but mostly because of arrogance. You want to be treated well, but you don't want to treat others well. Because you think you deserve it, but others don't because you're better or superior in some way. For example, you wouldn't want food thrown at you, but you throw the food at other people. There are so many different things that, when they're a result of certain things. Takabbur, hasad, all of those things, ethical issues, they have a result, they're a result, direct result of certain beliefs that you have in your mind. And then everything has a training. If there's a very beautiful book. Well, father and son wrote two similar books, Mi'raj al-Sa'ada and Jami' al-Sa'adat. Yes. Jami' al-Sa'adat is translated into English by Naraqi. If you go online, you'll find it. Probably an abridged translation, a small 60-70 page. The original is about 3 volumes, so over 600 pages, 700 pages. So both the father and son, Muhammad Mahdi Naraqi and Ahmad Naraqi. from Kashan originally. I think the son is a teacher of Sheikh Murtada Ansari, one of the greatest scholars that we've had in the past 150, 200 years, probably centuries. On a very small ayat from the Holy Quran, La tanqudul yaqina bishak. He wrote a whole of Usul al-Fiqh. You cannot take away certainty because of a doubt. You know this ayat from the Holy Quran, not the full ayat, just the part of the ayat. La tanqudul yaqina bishak. Certainty cannot be broken because of doubt. Just one small ayat. He wrote the whole of Rasail, Faraidul Usul. What do you do in the state of doubt? If you know the previous state, then you remain on the previous state. Meaning, you have a doubt, have you broken your wudu or not? Previously, you were sure that you had wudu. So, because you have a doubt, you will just remain on the previous state, which is istishab. You see, he gives reasons, obviously, for everything. Our whole usul al-fiqh is based on this one small part of the ayat. And then it goes on to, for example, if you don't know the previous state, then what do? Can you do ihtiyat? For example, can you take a precaution? If you can't take a precaution, can you? Or every step from doubt. You don't have certainty, you have a doubt. What do you do in the state of doubt? He developed the whole of usul al-fiqh. Today, I wanted to speak about akhlaq, but obviously, so Jummah khutbahs, they have to be in a particular time. So the entire judicial system in America was working on the case of the previous president, and he got convicted for all accounts. They didn't even leave him out on one single one, 34 accounts or something. Can you imagine? And then the president comes out and he says, this was all rigged. The entire judicial system is corrupt, and they rigged it. And the statement he used the day before yesterday, he said, even if it was Mother Teresa, she couldn't have come out of it. Meaning he's admitting, I'm not Mother Teresa, I'm a sinful person. Even if Mother Teresa was trapped, either as a president, he knows something that we don't know, or he's so corrupt that he doesn't even believe in his own judicial system. Both ways, the system is corrupt. Did I make sense? If the president knows something that we don't know, that the system is corrupt, that, like Plato had said that law is a web of a spider. Only weak are trapped in it. Is he weak? He is compared to the entire establishment. Yes? When you challenge the entire establishment, the government, he's already openly talking. You see, in certain countries like Pakistan, like Iran, like, many Muslim countries, there is a basic Muslim, condition from the Holy Quran or Hadith. Everyone, I hope people are paying attention. Like adala. A person has to be just, or a person has to be moral. In Pakistan, they say sadiq or ameen. Constitutionally, a person has to be truthful and reliable, sadiq and ameen, which hardly fits on any of the politicians. I know I'm going to Pakistan, but now in other countries they say adalat. Yes, they have to be fair. But in many countries like India, like America, like many other countries, you can even fight the election from the prison. They've accepted that you could be corrupt, you can still fight the election, or the cases against you could be politically motivated. So if he still gets elected, today they have also published, last night he was convicted, and this morning they've published the polls that people are betting that he will still win the elections. And what happens if he wins the elections? Then as the president of the country, he has the vilayat to overrule the Supreme Court of America and say, I forgive myself. And he also says that I will forgive all the people who were convicted in 2020 or 2021 for the case of 2020, when the elections happened and the people went into the party, the Congress of America. He said, I'll forgive every single person, the hundreds that have been convicted. So if they have the vilayat, then it is fine. Thumbs up. But if other countries also say that they have vilayat as well, then there is a problem. I intentionally use the term vilayat, yes, authority. Can you imagine? That a corrupt person also has vilayat. Has authority to forgive himself. What sort of system do we live in? I'm not going to challenge everything. Obviously, the perfect nizam will come with the 12th Imam alayhi salam. So there are obviously goods and bads in every system. But there are many developments, unfortunately, this week. The Americans, the British, and the Europeans, NATO, the entire group has authorized Ukraine to use the weapons that they've supplied in Russia, against Russia. And that's a deep escalation of the entire situation. They've also given a statement that if this happens, if the weapons from others, we will also kill all the soldiers and all the people that are fighting here. Can you imagine that we are now, the Prime Minister of Hungary and many countries are saying that Europe is now preparing for a war against Russia. China is preparing in June to invade Taiwan. They're saying we are the closest to the nuclear war that we have ever been in the past 70 years. So we are seeing all of these escalations. In all of this, do we get used by anyone? So there are, the British current Prime Minister, the early call for an election, yes, people were expecting it's going to be end of October onwards. Does anyone ever think why have they suddenly called the elections within, not even telling the people, not even telling the parliament, not even telling the cabinet? Probably the establishment has realized that this Prime Minister is not good enough for a war. So he must leave because he cannot lead the country in the war. And the country will not follow him. No matter who they bring in, at the moment we are living in an era of most unpopular leaders. Does everyone understand So we're living in an era where they all have blood on their hands. They all have many other charges against them, not just war crimes. So probably we will see, 75 countries are having elections, many have had them and many are having them. Does it seem like that we're having an election in this country? It hasn't sunk in, it hasn't sunk in. So you can imagine that similar situations have happened other places. India is going to be announcing next week who the new Prime Minister is. Sometimes, you already know the results. And people say, how do you know the results? I don't have ilm-e-ghaib, you can just predict. Unfortunately, we're living in an age where no matter what system you bring in, there's more sophisticated election machines, and the guy says, I pressed a button, but the rose came on. He said, you must have made a mistake. I didn't press the rose. He said, so rose belongs to Modi's party. So he said, what's going on? So he said, something must have happened in that, but others are not going to speak. So we see internationally there are a lot of people openly speaking. But the most beautiful thing about Donald Trump is that he's openly saying what he believes and what the system tells him. I'm going to throw out all the people who marched against Israel pro-Palestine. I'm going to throw out everyone out of the country. And so the BBC International, the World Service was doing a research on some of the people that supported him. One of the main campaigners for Donald Trump, and he is already, the Nazi salute. Yes, I'm not the only one who knows it. And very open discussions in America on their groups, social media, that we're going to be, going into a civil war, throwing people out of this country after the next election. Very open discussions. Germany, far right as well, but, they're not going to go as far as that, or are they? We don't know. So the British have already passed a law in this country. We are living under a law that they can take away your passport, confiscate everything that you own if they decide that you are breaking the law. So they will decide. They don't have to give you any reasons. They don't allow you to fight a case in the court. And they can take away your nationality, confiscate everything that you have, and throw you out of the country. They will not even allow you to enter and fight your case. So they've passed a law. So internationally, we're going through, an age of deglobalization, as they've called it, or globalization, as the BBC called it, globalization in reverse. So we're going to see many, many developments. We are not in an age where civil wars are out of the question, problems are out of the question, and the people who speak on these can be people who are causing problems. And you could be legally convicted for inciting hatred or sometimes other laws that they will make. But it is very important that we are aware of what is going on internationally. Amirul Mu'minin has a very beautiful saying. Obviously there are proverbs in English and other languages that have been taken from Amirul Mu'minin, but they've been changed a little, and then the person who translates it takes the credit and says, it's mine. Like for example, history repeats itself. Yes, this is Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam. And so this, kama tudin tudan. Like Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam says that this was a law given to Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam, David, yes, that what you sow, I'm going to translate it, the proverb, what you sow, so shall you reap. Jaisa karoge, vaisa bharoge. Like in Urdu they say. So this is a sentence, a hadith by Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam, where he says that, people are going around in the world sowing war. So what are they going to reap? So it is something that we are seeing now. There are many, many countries that are going through extreme economical problems. Our current Prime Minister had said that this is the worst economical crisis for 250 years. I remember correctly hearing him when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. He said that. But now they've said, no, this is the worst economical crisis in the past 70 years, or since the Second World War. So they've modified it. Obviously, they know the inside story better than we do. Do you feel that it is as bad as the Second World War? You don't, but suddenly you'll get a surprise. One day you wake up and say, oh, this is how, why will these things happen? We don't know. The easiest thing is that you blame your own. A bad worksman always blames his tools. You remember that proverb? What does that mean? It doesn't say that I couldn't make the door properly, I couldn't make the member properly, I couldn't make this pulp. The tools were not good enough. So I couldn't use them properly. Everyone, please, let me conclude with this. So you have a lot of people internationally saying, well, we had Corona, we had wars, we had this. So, they'll quickly blame something. Well, you were in control. You could decide that, do I spend 800 billion on Afghanistan war, 600 billion on Iraq war, and 200 billion on Ukraine war, or do I spend it on my country? Yeah. Priorities. And if you go down the list, the number of people each one of these wars has killed, goes into millions. Just in Iraq, they're saying 1.7 million people have died in the American-Iraq war. The point that I'm trying to make, please, if everyone pays attention, everyone just blames the circumstances. Yes, economical crisis, I had Corona, I had this, I had that. We have an Imam. Imam is Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. He receives his imamat in the eve of Ashura. Yes, he became an imam at the martyrdom of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So he is the leader now. Not once in his life did he turn around and say, I blame everything on Karbala, on Ashura, on the martyrdom. I was taken as a captive. We were in the streets. Economical crisis, we were captives. Not once did he blame the circumstances. I was ill, no corona, nothing. He was ill, he was taken as a captive. Look at how he saved the Shayyu and the Shiaism, entire Shiaism, in the time of Yazid, who was saying that I'm going to kill Hussein and every single person that follows him. And he did. He started killing everyone. 3 years, 3.5 years he ruled. Look at all the incidents that happened. It was the wisdom and leadership of Imam Sajjad ﷺ that saved Shia. It was the help of Zainab Kubra salam alayha and the courage of Hazrat Zainab Kubra salam alayha that saved the Shia. Can you imagine? It's very easy to point fingers and blame. The leader is that takes out the country from crisis, not the one who puts the country into crisis. It's very easy to just quickly point fingers and say, well, this was going on. What's the point of your leadership? I have an uncle, he's retired now. In Pakistan, he was in charge from the government of the dry port on the Indian-Pakistani border in Sialkot. And this is going back in the 90s. He said there was a suicide attack. The dry port was attacked by the terrorists, and he said everything blew up. And he said, I was in charge and everyone was running to me. He said, sir, what do we do? He said, that was the day I felt, I'm not a leader, I don't know what to do in crisis. Bodies all over, parts of the body, everything. He said, I didn't know what to do. And suddenly he said the Abdul Sattar Eidhi's ambulances came in and they started picking up the bodies and they cleaned up and they said, we'll tell you what to do. He said, then I said, he's a very high, big officer, yes? He said, and the people who are in emergency service, they knew what to do in an emergency. I didn't know how to control an emergency. I had no training. Obviously, after that, they started training the people in charge in what you do. Many of these leaders, this is not just one person. There is a whole system behind them. Organizational, governmental infrastructure of the, and then they are so incompetent that they take countries into crisis, economical crisis, and all sorts of crises. NHS is in crisis. The entire country was one of the biggest leaders, the third biggest organization. NHS was the third largest organization in the world. And today, you make dua, Ya Allah, I don't want to end up in NHS, because I've had to. Many of you would know, if you know my history, my surgeries and how many times I had to go, in 2006, 5, 6, 7, 8, all of those years. And 2 years ago, I had to go again, and then I was there for something like over 12 hours before I was properly seen by a doctor. Even having a medical history, they say, well, you have had priority. What are you complaining about? So a few Mu'min doctors came in and they were speaking to the doctors and they said, these people are now putting pressure on us, the emergency doctor said, because they're telling us you are important or you need to be seen. I said, no, it's okay. You can take as much as time you like. I've been here for 7 hours. I don't mind being here another 5 hours. And at the end, 4 or 5 doctors came and saw me and they said, okay, if you don't get better, we'll do another surgery. I said, oh my God, am I that bad? And then I told the nurse what to do. I said, the doctor who carried out my surgery, this is the treatment I need. And I got better after 4 hours. They didn't come back and saw me because they think, he thinks he knows better than us. I said, an old patient is half a doctor. He's had the treatment 20, 30, 40 times for the same illness. He's seen, so many different doctors. I've, had emergencies in so many countries. If any of those doctors are listening, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that the whole system has been brought to the knees because of the mistakes of the top leadership in the country. I'm giving a personal experience that it is happening to millions of people in the country. It is happening throughout, and there are people complaining. And then you again blame others. Well, Corona came in, so, so many people died, so what can I do? What is your plan now? Please pay attention to the last point that I want to make. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, what I want to say, and if I don't want people to go out confused. We do have confused.com, but, I don't want to be that. We went into the Pakistani embassy, the Pakistani High Commission in London, saying that so many Shias have been killed. So the ambassador, he died now, so I don't want to name him. He said, well, it's nothing to do with us. Our government is nice. It was General Ziaul Haq who started the terrorism. I said, how long ago did General Ziaul Haq die? He said, 30 years. So I said, in 30 years you couldn't rectify? I said, well, it's going to take time. I said, please tell me how long, so then we can wait, 100 years, 200 years. At least I can tell my children that don't mess with the government because they're going to take 200 years to... So he said, well, it's going to take, it's only been 30 years and we've been trying to rectify, and you can't blame everything on us. The previous governments, again the same, what have you different from the mediocre governments from other countries, saying that, the previous governments made a mess. How long will it take for you to rectify? So we have, unfortunately, very incompetent leaders, not only just here, I'm just talking internationally. And we need leaders who probably take us out of those crises and not put us in further crises. And with wars coming to the doorsteps, I think we're going to see more crises. I hope people talk about books and not bombs, and they spread education and not wars. I hope that the humanity learns from the past mistakes of the previous leaders and not go to further wars and kill millions and millions. We've had children continuously being killed in Gaza for almost 8 months. And there are people saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. Right to defend is one thing, and to kill innocent civilians is another. If you cannot differentiate between the two, then I think it will be an injustice to not only just Gaza, but to the entire humanity. What is happening in Rafah now? 1.7 million people were told to leave Gaza to go into Rafah. And now 1.3 million people have left Rafah. And they don't have any other places to go to. The escalations internationally and many countries being quiet on all, complicit on all the tyranny that is going on is unbelievable. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may He not hold us accountable for the crimes of the leaders that we are living in. There are many ayat in the Holy Quran that sometimes many people are also held accountable and they are punished. Why? Because they have been quiet. Oh Allah, do not punish us for the people that are innocently dying in the countries because of the decisions of the leaders in many of Muslim and non-Muslim countries alike. Oh Allah, there are many, many Muslim leaders who have committed many, many serious crimes, just being quiet on the crimes against Gaza. Oh Allah, do not hold us accountable for all of them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma lakal hamdu badi as-samawati wal ard. Dhal jalali wal ikrami Rabbal arbab wa ilaha kulli maluh wa khaliqa kulli makhluqin wa waritha kulli shay. Laysa kamithlihi shay wa huwa bi kulli shay'in muhit. أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت الأحد المتوحد الفرد المتفرد وأنت الله لا إله إلا أنت الكريم المتكرم العظيم والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الرحمة سيد المرسلين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلي بن أبي طالب سيد الوسيين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وفاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد والحسن المجتبى حجة الله على الخلق أجمعين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد والحسين الشهيد المظلوم وارث أمير المؤمنين اللهم صل على محمد وعلي بن الحسين زين العابدين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد ومحمد بن علي باقر علم الأولين والآخرين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وجعفر بن محمد الصادق الصديق والمقتدى بآبائه الصالحين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم من أولاد النبيين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلي بن موسى الرضا من عترة بررة المتقين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد ومحمد بن علي الجواد ولي المؤمنين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلي بن محمد السراج المنير إمام الخاشعين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد والحسن بن علي سيد الأوصياء المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد والخلف القائم المهدي المنتظر الحجة اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد بعد آبائه على خلقك المؤدي عن نبيك ووارث علم الماضيين من الوسيين الذي ببقائه بقيت الدنيا وبيمنه رزق الوراء وبوجوده ثبتت الأرض والسماء وبه يملأ الله الأرض قسطا وعدلا كما ملأ ظلما وجورا وعجلنا اللهم ظهوره إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم افتح لنا أبواب توبتك ورحمتك ورزقك الواسع إنا إليك من الراغبين وأتمم لنا إنعامك إنك خير المنعمين اللهم اجعل بقية أعمارنا في أداء فرض الجمعات والحج والعمرة ابتغاء وجهك يا رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين والسلام عليه وعليهم परवरदिगार हम सब की आक़िबत बखैर फरमा साहिब ज़मान के ज़हूर में ताजील फरमा दुश्मनान अहले बैत दुश्मनान इस्लाम को नीस्त नाबूद फरमा इस ममरका को तरक्की इनायत फरमा हम सब की आक़िबत बखैर फरमा हम सब के तमाम मरीज़ों को शफ़ाए कामिला अजला इनायत फरमा परवरदिगार रब्बे औलादों को औलाद इनायत फरमा मक़रूज़ों के क़र्ज़े अदा फरमा परेशान हालों की परेशानियाँ दूर फरमा गज़ा के फ़लस्तीन के शाम के लुबनान के इराक़ ईरान के अफ़ग़ानिस्तान पाकिस्तान हिंदुस्तान के यमन और अफ्रीका के मुसलमानों पर रहम फरमा परवरदिगारा जो हाथ बुलंद सबकी हिफाजत फरमा रब्बना तक़ब्बल मिन्ना इन्नका अंतस समीउल अलीम बिहक़्क़ि मुहम्मद व आलिहि तय्यबीन अत्ताहिरीन अल-मासूमीन। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम अशहदु अन्ना अलिय्यन वलियुल्लाह अशहदु अन्ना अलिय्यन हुज्जतुल्लाह हय्या अलस सलाह हय्या अलस सलाह हय्या अलल फलाह हय्या अलल फलाह हय्या अला खैरिल अमल हय्या अला खैरिल अमल क़द क़ामतिस सलातो क़द क़ामतिस सलाह अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अस्तग़फिरुल्लाह मिन कुल्लि ज़ंबिन व अतूबु इलैह। अल्लाहु अकबर बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन अर्रहमानिर्रहीम मालिकि यौमिद्दीन इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन इहदिनस सिरातल मुस्तक़ीम सिरातल लज़ीना अनअमता अलैहिम गैरिल मग़दूबि अलैहिम वलद्दाल्लीन। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम युसब्बिहु लिल्लाहि मा फ़िस समावाति व मा फ़िल अर्ज़िल मलिकिल क़ुद्दूसिल अज़ीज़िल हकीम हुवल्लज़ी बअस फ़िल उम्मिय्यीन रसूलन मिनहुम यतलू अलैहिम आयातिही व युज़क्कीहिम व युअल्लिमुहुमुल किताब वल हिकमत व इन कानू मिन क़ब्लु लफ़ी ज़लालिम मुबीन।
وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله الحليم الكريم. لا إله إلا الله العلي العظيم. سبحان الله رب السماوات السبع ورب الأرضين السبع وما فيهن وما بينهن ورب العرش العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. بجاه محمد وآله الأطهار. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله أول قبل الإنشاء والإحياء، والآخر بعد فناء الأشياء، العليم الذي لا ينسى من ذكره ولا ينقص من شكره ولا يخيب من دعاه ولا يقطع رجاء من رجاه. اللهم إني أشهدك وكفى بك شهيدا، وأشهد جميع ملائكتك وسكان سماواتك وحملة عرشك ومن بعثت من أنبيائك ورسلك وأنشأت من أصناف خلقك، أني أشهد أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك، ولا عديل ولا خلف لقولك ولا تبديل، وأن محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله عبدك ورسولك، أدى ما حملته إلى العباد وجاهد في الله عز وجل حق الجهاد، وأنه بشر بما هو حق من الثواب وأنذر بما هو صدق من العقاب. اللهم ثبتني على دينك ما أحييتني، ولا تزغ قلبي بعد إذ هديتني، وهب لي من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. صل على محمد وآل محمد، واجعلني من أتباعه وشيعته، واحشرني في زمرته، ووفقني لأداء فرض الجمعات وما أوجبت علي فيها من الطاعات، وقسمت لأهلها من العطاء في يوم الجزاء، إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. وصل يا رب على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Could you please recite Surah Fatiha for H.K. Jafar, Ruqya by Jafar, Layla by Jafar, the marhumin of all here present, and kulli marhum mu'minin wal mu'minat. Bismillah. The suffering goes on, so let us remember our mu'mineen, mu'minat who are either unwell or suffering today with dua shifa, please. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amman yujibul mutarra iza da'a wa yakshifu su. Amman yujibul mutarra iza da'a wa yakshifu su. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن مضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Just to remind our men here that just as we have always served our women, when you come for Jummah, could you please start gathering from the left over there so that we don't have to ask you to keep coming when the namaz starts. Please, so start from the left and then fill up the... Okay, and number 2 is my mantra. Donations, please, for your own sakes. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر.